Commander Zekthara stretched his massive frame across the observation deck, his chitinous armor catching the artificial light of the space station's central hub. The Veltar warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his forearms ending in razor-sharp claws that had carved through countless enemies across a dozen star systems. Battle scars crisscrossed his exoskeleton like a map of conquered worlds, each mark telling a story of victory against the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. The cantina buzzed with the usual mix of traders, mercenaries, and explorers from across the Galactic Federation. Holographic displays showed shipping routes, bounty postings, and newsfeeds from the Outer Rim territories. The air recyclers struggled against the combined atmosphere requirements of 20 different species, creating a humid, slightly acrid environment that reminded everyone they were far from home. Zekthara's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he surveyed the crowd. Most beings gave him a wide berth, recognizing the insignia of the Deathworld Hunters Guild emblazoned across his chestplate. The guild was legendary throughout the galaxy, composed of elite warriors who specialized in tracking and eliminating the most dangerous predators known to galactic civilization. A group of younger aliens had gathered around his table, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and admiration. They represented half a dozen species from the safer core worlds, beings who had never ventured beyond the comfortable boundaries of civilized space. To them, Zekthara was a living legend, a warrior who danced with death among the nightmare creatures of forbidden worlds. "Tell us about the Shadow Maw of Kepler 442, urged a blue-skinned Andorian trader, her crystalline hair shimmering with excitement. The report said it was 12 meters long and could phase through solid matter. Zekthara's thorax swelled with pride. His lower arms gestured dramatically while his upper ones remained crossed, a sign of confidence among his people. The Shadow Maw, he began, his voice a deep rumble that commanded attention, was indeed a magnificent predator. It had terrorized 3 mining colonies for over a year, appearing without warning to drag screaming workers into the darkness between dimensions. The crowd leaned forward, hanging on every word. Even the bartender, a gruff centaurian with 6 eyes, had stopped polishing glasses to listen. The colonial authorities offered a bounty of 50,000 credits, but no one would take the contract. They said it was suicide to hunt something that could exist partially outside normal spacetime. But Zekthara of the Veltar does not know the meaning of fear. His primary arms spread wide, encompassing the entire gathering. I tracked the beast for 17 days through the crystal caverns of Kepler 442. The atmospheric pressure would have crushed most species, and the ambient radiation would have cooked their organs from the inside. But we Veltar are built for the harshest environments in the galaxy. A young Procyon engineer with fur that rippled in rainbow patterns spoke up nervously. How did you kill something that could phase through matter? Conventional weapons would have been useless. Zekthara's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his kind. Patience and superior intellect, little one. The Shadow Maw may have been able to shift between dimensions, but it still needed to feed in this reality. I studied its hunting patterns, learning to predict where it would manifest. When it finally appeared to claim its next victim, I was waiting with a quantum net launcher. He paused for dramatic effect, noting how the entire cantina had grown quiet. Even the background chatter had died down as more patrons turned to listen. This was the moment he lived for, the recognition of his prowess as the galaxy's premier Deathworld hunter. The quantum net disrupted its dimensional shifting ability, trapping it in our reality. Once anchored, it was simply a matter of superior firepower and tactics. 47 plasma bolts to its nervous system, and the great Shadow Maw became nothing more than an exotic trophy for my collection. The crowd erupted in appreciative murmurs and clicks. Several beings raised their drinks in salute, and Zekthara basked in their adoration. This was why he chose to spend his downtime at frontier stations like this one, where his reputation preceded him and the locals understood the significance of his achievements. "What about the void leviathans of the Horsehead Nebula?" called out a merchant from the back of the group. My cousin was part of the survey team that first discovered them. He said they were the size of battlecruisers and could survive in hard vacuum. Zekthara's chest swelled even further. Ah, the void leviathans. Now there was a hunt worthy of my skills. Creatures that had evolved in the cold darkness between stars, their hides harder than military-grade armor plating. The Federation Navy had lost 3 destroyers trying to clear them from a shipping lane. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, forcing the audience to strain closer. I spent 6 months studying their migration patterns, following their pods across 17 light-years of empty space. Most beings would have gone insane from the isolation, but the mind of a Veltar warrior is as strong as his claws. One of his lower arms reached for a personal display unit, calling up holographic images of massive, whale-like creatures drifting through starfields. Their skin seemed to absorb light, making them appear as living shadows against the cosmic backdrop. The key was understanding their feeding cycle. Void leviathans consume stellar radiation and cosmic particles, filtering them through specialized organs in their digestive systems. Every 73 days, they must purge the accumulated waste products, creating a temporary vulnerability window. The images shifted to show Zekthara himself, dwarfed by the massive creatures as he maneuvered a specialized hunter-killer pod through the void. His chitinous form was encased in a custom-built exosuit designed to operate in the absolute zero of interstellar space. I struck during their purge cycle, when their internal systems were compromised and their defensive capabilities reduced. A single molecular disruptor torpedo, precisely placed at the base of the primary feeding tentacle. The resulting chain reaction tore through the entire pod, 17 void leviathans eliminated in a matter of minutes. The crowd was completely enthralled now, their drinks forgotten as they absorbed every detail of his conquests. Zekthara felt the familiar rush of superiority that came with being recognized as the apex predator among predators. In a galaxy filled with countless dangerous species, he had proven himself master of them all. A small voice piped up from the edge of the group, barely audible above the ambient noise of the station. "What about humans?" The question came from an unlikely source, a diminutive being sitting alone at a corner table. She appeared to be from one of the newer species recently inducted into the Federation, her pale skin and dark hair marking her as likely originating from somewhere in the Orion Arm. Her clothing was simple and unremarkable, the kind worn by mid-level bureaucrats or civilian contractors. Zekthara's attention turned toward her, his four eyes narrowing as he processed the unexpected interruption. "Humans," he repeated, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "I do not understand the relevance of your question, small one." The human female looked up from her tablet, where she had apparently been working on some mundane administrative task. Her expression was mild, almost innocent, but there was something in her eyes that gave Zekthara pause. They were dark, almost black, and seemed to hold depths that belied her unremarkable appearance. "You've told us about hunting the galaxy's most dangerous predators," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Zekthara couldn't immediately place. "Creatures from Deathworlds with extreme environments and lethal natural weapons. I was just curious if any of those worlds were inhabited by humans." The crowd turned to look at the human, many of them seeming to notice her for the first time. Humans were relatively new to galactic civilization, having achieved faster-than-light travel only a few decades ago. Most species viewed them as a minor curiosity, another pre-industrial civilization that had managed to bootstrap themselves into space travel through sheer determination and improvisation. Zekthara's mandibles clicked dismissively. "Humans are not predators, little one. They are barely above the level of primitive tool users. Their homeworld is classified as a standard M-class planet with moderate environmental hazards. They pose no threat to a warrior of my caliber." The human nodded thoughtfully, her fingers still moving across her tablet's surface. "I see. So you've never hunted on Earth or any of the human colony worlds?" "There would be no point," Zekthara replied, his voice taking on a condescending tone. "Humans are prey species. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no specialized adaptations for survival in extreme environments. They compensate for their physical weaknesses through technology and social cooperation, but strip away their machines and they are helpless." The rest of the audience chuckled at this assessment, many nodding in agreement. The general galactic consensus was that humans were a curious anomaly, a species that had somehow stumbled into space travel despite being poorly equipped for survival beyond their home planet. They were known for being diplomatic and industrious, but hardly the stuff of warrior legends. The human woman's expression remained neutral, but Zekthara caught a subtle shift in her posture. She leaned back in her chair, one hand coming to rest on something at her belt that he couldn't quite see. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different quality, something that made the veteran hunter's instincts suddenly alert. "That's interesting," she said quietly. "Because I was under the impression that several Deathworld hunting expeditions had visited human space in recent years. The records I've been reviewing suggest that some very prominent guild members took contracts on human worlds." Zekthara's confidence faltered for just a moment. There was something in the human's tone that suggested she knew more than she was letting on. The way she spoke with such certainty about guild records implied access to information that should have been restricted to guild members and Federation military intelligence. Records? He asked, his voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. What records? Civilian contractors do not have access to guild mission files. The human smiled, and, for the first time, Zekthara noticed that her canine teeth were slightly more pronounced than he had expected. It was a subtle thing, easily overlooked, but his predator's instincts catalogued every detail. "Oh, I'm not a contractor," she said, her fingers tapping a specific sequence on her tablet. The device's screen shifted from whatever administrative work she had been doing to display what appeared to be official Federation documentation. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, Federation Intelligence Service. And I've been investigating some very interesting disappearances." The cantina suddenly felt much quieter, as if the ambient noise had been sucked away by an invisible force. Zekthara's forearms tensed, his claws extending slightly as his combat instincts engaged. Federation intelligence was not an organization to be trifled with, and their interest in guild activities suggested complications he hadn't anticipated. "Disappearances," he repeated, his voice carefully neutral. Commander Chen nodded, turning her tablet around to display a series of holographic portraits. The faces that appeared were unmistakably those of various alien species, each one bearing the distinctive markings and equipment of Deathworld hunters. Zekthara recognized several of them, prominent guild members who had taken high-value contracts in recent months. "Guildmaster Varthok of the Krex Dominion," she began, her finger highlighting the first image. "Took a contract to eliminate what he called apex predators on a human agricultural world designated Kepler 438b. That was 8 months ago. He never returned, and his ship was found drifting empty near the system's asteroid belt." The image shifted to show a massive, insectoid creature with wicked side-like appendages. "Hunter Prime Zyxandra of the Hive Collective. Accepted a bounty to clear dangerous wildlife from a human mining operation on Ross 128b. Her bioship was discovered crashed on the planet's surface, completely stripped of all organic components." Zekthara felt a cold sensation spreading through his thorax, something he had never experienced in decades of hunting the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. The hunters Chen was describing were legends in their own right, beings whose skill and ferocity were spoken of with reverence throughout the guild. "Hunter Captain Morgoth the Bloodied," Chen continued, highlighting a third image showing a heavily armored reptilian warrior. "Disappeared while investigating reports of unnatural predator behavior in the forests of a human colony world. His last transmission mentioned encountering something that fought like no beast I have ever known." The crowd had grown completely silent now, even the background noise of the station seeming muted. Zekthara found himself leaning forward despite his growing unease, drawn by a mixture of professional curiosity and dawning apprehension. "These are just the ones we know about," Chen said quietly. "There are others. Experienced hunters, veterans of 100 Deathworld expeditions, all vanishing without trace after taking contracts in human space. The pattern is unmistakable." One of Zekthara's lower hands moved unconsciously to the weapon harness across his chest, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the human intelligence officer. Her dark eyes tracked the movement with predatory precision, and, for the first time in his adult life, Zekthara felt like he was being hunted. "What are you implying?" he asked, his voice dropping to a low growl. Chen's smile widened slightly, revealing those subtly pointed canine teeth. "I'm not implying anything, Commander Zekthara. I'm stating a fact. Every single Deathworld hunter who has attempted to operate on human-inhabited worlds has disappeared. Not defeated in honorable combat, not overcome by superior firepower, not killed by environmental hazards. Disappeared. Without a trace." She leaned forward, her black eyes reflecting the cantina's lights like dark mirrors. "So I have to ask you the same question you've been answering all evening. You've boasted about hunting the galaxy's most dangerous predators, creatures that have terrorized entire star systems. But, did any of them survive an encounter with a human?" The silence stretched between them, pregnant with implications that Zekthara's mind was only beginning to process. In the background, the station's life support systems hummed their eternal song, but it sounded different now, more ominous, like the breathing of some vast, unseen predator. For the first time in his long and distinguished career as a Deathworld hunter, Commander Zekthara of the Veltar found himself wondering if he was the prey. The uncomfortable silence that followed Lieutenant Commander Chen's revelation stretched across the cantina like a physical presence. Zekthara's mandibles worked soundlessly as he processed the implications of what he had just heard. Around them, the crowd of admirers had unconsciously taken several steps backward, their earlier enthusiasm replaced by a palpable tension. Chen's tablet continued displaying the portraits of missing hunters, their faces rotating slowly in the holographic field. Each image seemed to carry its own weight of unfinished business, of questions that demanded answers. The human intelligence officer waited patiently, her dark eyes never leaving Zekthara's face as the veteran warrior struggled with concepts that challenged everything he thought he knew about galactic predator hierarchies. "This is impossible," Zekthara finally managed, his voice hoarse with uncertainty. "Humans are a peaceful species. They have no history of aggressive expansion, no military traditions worthy of note. Their physiology is laughably inadequate for combat against trained hunters." Chen nodded slowly, as if she had expected this exact response. "That's what the galactic consensus believes, yes. It's also what these missing hunters believed when they accepted their contracts. Would you like to see their mission files?" Without waiting for an answer, she manipulated her tablet's interface, causing the displayed portraits to be replaced by official Federation documents. The text was in standard galactic script, but Zekthara's translation implants automatically converted it to his native language. Guildmaster Varthok's contract was straightforward, Chen began, her voice taking on the clinical tone of a professional briefing. The agricultural collective on Kepler 438b was experiencing significant crop losses due to what they described as nocturnal predators. Initial surveys suggested the involvement of local wildlife, possibly mutations caused by the terraforming process. The document displayed detailed environmental readings from the planet, showing a world that appeared remarkably benign by galactic standards. Moderate gravity, comfortable atmospheric pressure, surface temperatures well within the range considered optimal for most known species. By any reasonable measure, it should have been a routine extermination contract. Varthok logged his arrival at the agricultural complex on schedule, Chen continued. His initial reports were confident, almost dismissive. He described the human colonists as primitive farmers with inadequate defensive measures. His last transmission was recorded at 0347 local time, approximately 6 hours after he began his hunt. The audio file that played next sent an involuntary shiver through Zekthara's exoskeleton. Varthok's voice, normally a deep bass rumble that could intimidate most sentient species, carried a note of confusion and growing alarm. "This is most unusual. The tracks I have been following suggest a predator of considerable size, but the behavioral patterns are unlike anything in my experience. The creature appears to be actively hunting me, using tactics that demonstrate advanced intelligence and tactical awareness. It has somehow gotten ahead of my position 3 times, setting what can only be described as ambushes." There was a pause in the recording, filled with the sounds of Kepler 438b's alien night. When Varthok's voice resumed, the confidence was completely gone, replaced by something Zekthara had never heard from the legendary hunter before: fear. "I believe I am dealing with more than simple wildlife. The evidence suggests coordinated pack behavior, but the coordination is too sophisticated, too calculated. No animal hunts like this. No animal should be able to anticipate my movements with such precision." The recording cut off abruptly, leaving only the quiet hum of the cantina's environmental systems. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Zekthara detected something in her posture that suggested personal involvement in the case. "Varthok's biosigns continued for another 3 hours, she said quietly. His suit's emergency beacon remained active until dawn, but when the human colonists found his ship, there was no trace of him. No body, no equipment, no signs of struggle. It was as if he had simply vanished." One of the younger aliens in the crowd, a Procyon engineer with nervous energy crackling through his rainbow fur, finally found his voice. "But what about his tracking systems? Surely a hunter of his caliber would have recorded data about whatever killed him?" Chen's smile was cold and humorless. "That's where things get interesting. Varthok's suit systems were completely intact, fully functional right up until the moment he disappeared. But every single data file related to his hunt was corrupted beyond recovery. Not damaged, not destroyed. Deliberately corrupted using techniques that required intimate knowledge of Krek's technology." The implications hit Zekthara like a physical blow. The Kreks were among the galaxy's most technologically advanced species, their biomechanical systems nearly impossible for outsiders to comprehend, let alone manipulate. For someone to have corrupted Varthok's systems so completely suggested capabilities that far exceeded what anyone believed humans possessed. You are suggesting that humans somehow overpowered and killed a Krex guildmaster, Zekthara said slowly, his voice carrying more question than statement. A warrior who had successfully hunted across 47 different death worlds. I'm not suggesting anything, Shen replied. I'm showing you the evidence and letting you draw your own conclusions. But, before you decide, perhaps you'd like to see what happened to Hunter Prime ZYX-Andra. The tablet's display shifted again, this time showing orbital imagery of a planet that looked even more hospitable than Kepler 438b. Ross 128b appeared to be a textbook example of successful human terraforming, with vast forests, clean rivers, and settlements that seemed to blend seamlessly into the natural landscape. ZYX-Andra was hired to clear what the mining consortium described as aggressive local fauna that was interfering with excavation operations, Jen explained. The initial reports suggested some kind of pack predator, possibly evolved from Earth-origin species that had been introduced during the terraforming process. Zekthara leaned forward despite himself. He was familiar with ZYX-Andra's reputation, a Hive collective warrior whose bioship was essentially a living weapon. The idea that anything on a peaceful mining world could threaten such a creature was almost incomprehensible. ZYX-Andra's approach was characteristic of her species, Chen continued. She deployed her bioship in a standard hunting configuration, using its sensory organisms to map the entire threat environment before engaging. Her initial scans detected approximately 30 large predators scattered across the mining zone, nothing that should have posed a significant challenge. The display showed tactical readouts from the bioship's sensors, revealing heat signatures moving through the forest canopy with fluid, coordinated precision. The patterns were unlike anything Zekthara had seen before, suggesting pack animals with intelligence approaching sentient levels. The engagement began at dawn on her second day planetside, Chen said. ZYX-Andra's bioship recorded the initial contact as routine. She deployed hunter organisms to flush the predators from cover while maintaining overwatch from an altitude of 3 kilometers. Audio from the bioship's communication system played the sounds of what should have been a standard hunting operation. ZYX-Andra's voice, filtered through her species' complex respiratory system, provided tactical updates with professional efficiency. But, as the recording progressed, Zekthara detected subtle changes in her tone. Something is wrong with these creatures, ZYX-Andra's voice crackled through the speakers. They are not responding to standard harassment techniques. Instead of fleeing, they appear to be regrouping. The thermal signatures suggest they are coordinating their movements in response to my hunter organisms. There was a pause, followed by sounds that Zekthara's translator couldn't immediately process. When the recording resumed, ZYX-Andra's voice carried a note of disbelief. Impossible. The predators have somehow neutralized all 6 of my hunter organisms. Not killed, neutralized. Their biosigns show they are alive but completely paralyzed. This suggests the use of targeted neurological agents with species-specific effects. The crowd around Zekthara had grown completely silent, hanging on every word of the impossible account. The idea that primitive Earth animals could develop neurological weapons effective against Hive collective biotechnology was beyond their comprehension. What happened next? Asked the Andorian trader, her crystalline hair dimmed to a dull blue with anxiety. Chen's expression darkened. According to the bioship's final transmissions, the predators began what can only be described as a coordinated assault. They somehow scaled the ship's biohull, targeting its sensory organs with surgical precision. ZYX-Andra's last communication described creatures that move like liquid shadow and struck with knowledge of our physiology that should be impossible. The tactical display showed the bioship's final moments, its organic systems shutting down in sequence as the attacking predators systematically disabled its defensive capabilities. What should have been an hour-long battle was over in less than 12 minutes. The mining consortium's rescue team found the bioship crashed in a forest clearing, Chen continued. Every trace of organic matter had been stripped away, leaving only the mineral skeleton. ZYX-Andra's body was never recovered, but the pattern of damage suggested she had been processed. Processed? Zekthara's voice was barely above a whisper. Consumed in a manner consistent with highly efficient predatory behavior. No waste, no unnecessary violence. Clinical, precise, and thorough. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of several beings pushing their drinks away, their appetites apparently lost. Zekthara found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about human space and the creatures that inhabited it. But these could be isolated incidents, he said, grasping for an explanation that didn't shatter his worldview. Perhaps these were rogue experiments, illegal genetic modifications that created abnormal predators. Chen's smile returned, carrying no warmth whatsoever. That's what we thought initially. Until we started investigating the pattern more thoroughly. The disappearances aren't random, Commander Zekthara. They're specific. Every single missing hunter was considered elite, a master of their craft. And every single one disappeared while hunting on worlds where humans had established settlements. She manipulated her tablet again, bringing up a star chart that showed human colonial space. Red markers indicated the locations of hunter disappearances, forming a pattern that seemed to encompass the entire sphere of human expansion. 17 different worlds. 23 missing hunters. All within the last 2 years, coinciding with the acceleration of human colonial expansion. The evidence suggests a coordinated campaign designed to eliminate specific threats to human settlements. The implications were staggering. If Chen's analysis was correct, then humans weren't the passive, peace-loving species that galactic civilization believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species capable of systematic deception on a galactic scale. Zekthara's mind raced as he tried to process the ramifications. You believe humans have been deliberately targeting Deathworld hunters? I believe humans are very good at appearing harmless while systematically eliminating threats to their expansion, Chen replied. The question is what we do with this information. She leaned back in her chair, her dark eyes scanning the faces of everyone within earshot. The Federation Council needs to understand what they're dealing with. These disappearances represent the elimination of some of our most capable military assets, beings whose loss significantly impacts our strategic capabilities. But, you have no proof, Zekthara protested, though his voice lacked conviction. No witnesses, no recovered bodies, no direct evidence of human involvement. Chen's expression shifted, revealing something predatory that had been hidden beneath her bureaucratic facade. Actually, Commander, that's where you come in. You see, I have a proposal for you. The human intelligence officer reached into her jacket and withdrew a small data pad, placing it on the table between them. The device displayed what appeared to be a standard guild contract, but the terms were unlike anything Zekthara had ever seen. The Federation Intelligence Service is prepared to offer you an exclusive contract, Chen said quietly. We want you to investigate these disappearances personally. Go to one of the affected worlds, track down whatever is responsible, and bring back evidence of what really happened to your fellow hunters. Zekthara stared at the contract, his four eyes trying to process the incredible offer. The compensation alone was enough to retire on, but, more importantly, it represented a chance to uncover the truth behind the most baffling mystery in recent galactic history. And, if I refuse? He asked. Chen's smile widened, revealing those slightly pointed teeth. Then, you continue believing that humans are harmless primitives. And, eventually, when you accept your next Deathworld contract, you might find yourself face to face with whatever killed Guildmaster Varthok and Hunter Prime Zyxandra. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Zekthara realized that his reputation as the galaxy's premier Deathworld hunter had made him a target for whatever was stalking his profession. He could accept Shen's contract and investigate from a position of Federation backing, or he could wait for the mysterious predators to come for him directly. What world would I be investigating? He asked slowly. Chen's tablet displayed an image of a planet that looked deceptively peaceful, covered in blue oceans and white clouds. Text scrolled alongside the image, providing basic details about atmospheric composition, gravity, and surface temperature. Earth, she said simply. The human homeworld. Where it all began. 3 weeks later, Zekthara stood on the bridge of his personal hunter vessel, the Apex Predator, watching Earth grow larger in the main viewport. The planet appeared exactly as described in Federation databases, a blue and white marble suspended against the darkness of space, unremarkable except for the unusual abundance of liquid water covering its surface. His ship's sensors painted a detailed picture of a world that seemed almost aggressively normal. Atmospheric composition showed the standard oxygen-nitrogen mix favored by most carbon-based species, gravity at a comfortable 0.98 Federation standard, and surface temperatures well within acceptable ranges for most known life forms. If not for the artificial satellites and orbital stations marking it as the seat of human civilization, Earth could have been mistaken for any of 1,000 other M-class worlds. The journey from the frontier station had given Zekthara time to study every available piece of intelligence about humanity and their homeworld. The official Federation files painted them as a remarkable success story, a species that had bootstrapped themselves from primitive technology to faster-than-light travel in less than 2 centuries. Their rapid advancement was attributed to unusual creativity and adaptability, traits that had allowed them to overcome the limitations of their relatively weak physiology. But Chen's classified files told a different story. The deeper intelligence assessments revealed patterns that painted humanity in a far more complex light. Their rapid technological advancement hadn't been achieved through peaceful research and development alone. Earth's history was marked by constant warfare, with humans developing increasingly sophisticated methods of killing each other across millennia of conflict. The contradiction was fascinating and deeply unsettling. How could a species appear so peaceful to galactic observers while simultaneously harboring such a violent evolutionary heritage? The answer, Zekthera was beginning to suspect, lay in humanity's remarkable talent for deception and misdirection. Incoming transmission from Earth Traffic Control announced his ship's AI in the neutral tone preferred by Veltar technology. They are requesting identification and purpose of visit. Zekthera settled into his command throne, a biomechanical construct that interfaced directly with his nervous system to provide enhanced situational awareness. The sensation of merging with his ship's sensor array was one he had always found comforting, but today it seemed less like empowerment and more like preparation for battle. "Open channel," he commanded. The main screen shifted to display a human face, middle-aged with graying hair and wearing what appeared to be a uniform of Earth's Orbital Traffic Authority. The man's expression was pleasant and professional, showing no recognition of Zekthera's species or the predatory reputation that preceded him. "Welcome to Earth orbital space," the human said with genuine warmth. "I'm Controller Martinez. How can we assist your visit today?" The casual friendliness was disarming. Zekthera had expected something more formal, perhaps even hostile given the implications of Chen's investigation. Instead, he was being greeted like any other tourist arriving to sample Earth's renowned hospitality. "I am Commander Zekthera of the Deathworld Hunters Guild," he replied, watching carefully for any reaction. "I am here conducting research into local fauna for potential guild contracts." Controller Martinez's face lit up with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm. "A Deathworld hunter. How exciting! We don't get many guild members visiting Earth." "I'm afraid our local wildlife isn't particularly dangerous by galactic standards, but I'm sure our xenobiology departments would be thrilled to meet you." The response was so unexpected that Zekthera found himself momentarily speechless. Where was the fear? The recognition of what he represented. Humans were supposed to be an intelligent species, yet this individual seemed completely unaware that he was speaking to one of the galaxy's most accomplished killers. "I have clearance for planetary surface operations," Zekthera managed, forwarding his Federation credentials. Of course," Martinez said, his fingers dancing across what appeared to be a primitive input interface. "I'm clearing you for approach to Landing Complex 7 in what we call the Pacific Northwest. Beautiful area, lots of forests that should interest a hunter. I'm also transmitting contact information for Dr. Sarah Williams at the University of Washington's Xenobiology program. She specifically requested to be notified if any guild hunters visited Earth." The mention of academic interest struck Zekthera as particularly odd. In his experience, civilian scientists tended to view Deathworld hunters with a mixture of fear and disapproval, seeing them as glorified exterminators rather than the elite warriors they truly were. The idea that a human scientist would actively want to meet him suggested either remarkable courage or dangerous naivety. "Thank you for your assistance," Zekthera said, ending the transmission before his confusion could become obvious. As his ship descended through Earth's surprisingly thick atmosphere, Zekthera activated his vessel's advanced sensor arrays to conduct a detailed scan of the planet below. What he found challenged every assumption he had made about human civilization. The surface teemed with life in a way that was almost unprecedented in his experience. Most civilized worlds showed clear demarcation between natural and artificial environments, with cities forming distinct islands of technology surrounded by carefully managed wilderness. But Earth seemed to blur these boundaries in ways that suggested a fundamentally different approach to planetary development. Human settlements appeared to be integrated into the natural environment rather than imposed upon it. Cities followed the contours of natural landforms, their architecture designed to minimize environmental impact. Transportation networks curved around preserved habitats, and what appeared to be urban centers from orbit revealed themselves to be complex arrangements of living spaces interwoven with natural systems. More disturbing was the sheer diversity of life his sensors detected. Earth wasn't just inhabited by humans and their domesticated species. The planet supported an ecosystem of staggering complexity, with millions of different life forms occupying every conceivable environmental niche. Many of these creatures showed physiological adaptations that would have made them formidable predators on any other world, yet somehow they coexisted with human civilization in apparent harmony. Zekthara's landing at Complex 7 was routine, his ship touching down on a platform that seemed to have been grown rather than built. The structure appeared to be some form of living concrete, a bioengineered material that absorbed impact and adjusted automatically to accommodate his vessel's specific configuration. Around the landing platform, forests of towering conifers stretched to the horizon, their canopy so dense that the ground below was lost in green shadow. The air that greeted him as he disembarked was rich with oxygen and filled with scents that his olfactory sensors couldn't immediately categorize. Everything smelled alive in a way that was both intoxicating and vaguely threatening. The sounds of the forest created a symphony of calls, rustling, and movement that spoke of an ecosystem in constant, dynamic motion. "Commander Zekthara?" The voice came from a human female approaching across the landing platform. She was tall for her species, perhaps 1.8 meters, with auburn hair and green eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of his appearance. Her clothing was practical and unremarkable, but Zekthara's predator instincts detected something in her movement patterns that suggested exceptional physical conditioning. "I am Dr. Sarah Williams from the University of Washington," she continued, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "We spoke briefly through traffic control. Welcome to Earth." Zekthara studied her carefully as he responded to the greeting. Her grip was firm without being aggressive, and her expression carried the same disarming warmth he had encountered from Controller Martinez. But there was something in her eyes, a depth of awareness that suggested she knew exactly what he was capable of and felt no concern about it whatsoever. "Dr. Williams," he acknowledged. "I appreciate your willingness to meet with me. I understand you have an interest in xenobiology?" Her smile widened, revealing those slightly pronounced canine teeth that seem to be common among humans. "Among other things. My specialty is actually comparative predator behavior across different evolutionary environments. Your reputation precedes you, Commander. I've read several analyses of your hunting techniques in the professional journals." The casual mention of professional journals studying his method struck Zekthara as unusual. Most species preferred not to examine the specific techniques used by Deathworld hunters, finding the details unnecessarily disturbing. But humans, apparently, had turned the study of killing into an academic discipline. "You study predatory behavior?" he asked. "Extensively," Williams replied, gesturing toward a vehicle that appeared to be waiting nearby. "Earth's evolutionary history is quite remarkable in that regard. We've produced some of the most efficient killing machines in known galactic history. I'd be happy to show you some examples during your visit." As they walked toward the vehicle, Zekthara found himself reassessing his host. Her casual mention of Earth's predatory heritage contradicted everything he had been told about human nature. More concerning was the way she spoke about killing machines as if discussing an interesting hobby rather than a source of existential dread. The vehicle itself was another surprise. Rather than the primitive mechanical transport he had expected, it appeared to be a sophisticated piece of biotechnology. The exterior resembled polished wood and living vines, but his scanner readings indicated computational systems more advanced than anything in his own ship. "Bio-integrated transport," Williams explained, noticing his interest. "We've found that hybrid organic digital systems perform better in Earth's complex electromagnetic environment. The biological components can adapt to changing conditions in ways that purely artificial systems cannot match." They settled into seats that molded themselves to accommodate Zekthara's anatomy, adjusting automatically for his size and the distribution of his weight. The interior was filled with the soft glow of bioluminescent panels that provided information displays in multiple formats simultaneously. "Where would you like to begin your research?" Williams asked as the vehicle lifted smoothly from the platform and began moving through the forest canopy. Zekthara considered the question carefully. His official mission was to investigate the disappearance of fellow hunters, but revealing that objective too quickly might compromise his ability to gather information. Instead, he decided to approach the problem obliquely. "I am interested in understanding Earth's ecosystem," he said finally. "Specifically, I would like to observe your apex predators in their natural environment." Williams nodded enthusiastically. "Excellent choice. We have several apex predator populations within a few hours of here. There's a pack of wolves that have been particularly active lately, and we've had some interesting reports of large cats in the mountain regions. Would either of those interest you? The casual way she mentioned large predator populations near human settlements sent another chill through Zekthara's exoskeleton. On most civilized worlds, dangerous wildlife was either eliminated or contained in remote preserves. But Earth seemed to maintain active predator populations in close proximity to its population centers. Wolves would be acceptable, he replied, curious to see how humans managed to coexist with pack hunters. Wonderful, Williams said, her fingers dancing across a bioluminescent control panel. I'll take you to the Olympic Peninsula. We have a magnificent pack there that's been part of a long-term behavioral study. Fair warning, though, they're quite intelligent. They may be as interested in observing you as you are in studying them. As their vehicle climbed higher into the forest canopy, Zekthara caught glimpses of the landscape below through breaks in the foliage. What he saw challenged his understanding of how apex predators were supposed to behave. Rather than the territorial disputes and competitive hunting he expected, he observed what appeared to be complex social interactions between different species. Bears fished in streams while deer grazed peacefully nearby. Birds of prey shared airspace without apparent conflict, and even the smaller predators seemed to move through the forest with confidence rather than the constant vigilance he associated with dangerous environments. Your ecosystem appears remarkably stable, he observed. Williams glanced at him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. Earth has had a long time to work out the details. 65 million years since the last major extinction event, give or take. That's enough time for predator and prey relationships to become quite sophisticated. The number hit Zekthara like a physical blow. 65 million years of continuous evolution of predators and prey locked in an arms race that had produced creatures capable of surviving anything the galaxy could throw at them. Suddenly, the missing hunters didn't seem like such a mystery anymore. Dr. Williams, he said carefully, in your professional opinion, what would happen if an off-world predator attempted to hunt in Earth's ecosystem? Her smile took on a quality that made Zekthara's instincts scream warnings. That's an interesting question, Commander. Why don't we find out? The vehicle banked sharply, descending toward a clearing where shadows moved with purposeful intelligence through the underbrush. As they approached, Zekthara realized that the wolves Williams had mentioned were already aware of their arrival. Multiple pairs of eyes reflected the vehicle's lights, and the way they positioned themselves suggested tactical coordination that surpassed anything he had encountered in 40 years of hunting across the galaxy. For the first time since accepting Chen's contract, Zekthara began to wonder if he was still the predator in this equation. The clearing where Dr. Williams brought Zekthara was unlike any hunting ground he had ever encountered. What appeared from above to be a simple forest meadow revealed itself upon closer inspection to be a carefully orchestrated theater of predator behavior. The wolves were there, as promised, but they weren't simply hunting or resting as he had expected. They were watching, evaluating, and planning with an intelligence that sent tremors of unease through his exoskeleton. Zekthara counted at least 12 individuals arranged in positions that suggested tactical awareness rather than instinctive pack behavior. The alpha pair maintained overwatch from elevated positions while the younger pack members moved through the underbrush with coordinated precision. Most disturbing was the way they regarded him, not with the fear or curiosity he expected from wild animals, but with the calculating assessment of fellow predators recognizing a potential threat. Magnificent, aren't they? Williams said softly, her voice carrying a note of pride that seemed oddly personal. This pack has been active in the region for 6 generations. We've documented their behavioral evolution over nearly 40 years of continuous study. She gestured toward a fallen log that had been positioned to provide optimal viewing of the clearing while maintaining what appeared to be a respectful distance from the wolf pack. As they settled into position, Zekthara noticed that his host had somehow produced a selection of monitoring equipment from concealed storage compartments in her clothing. Behavioral evolution, he asked, activating his own sensor arrays to begin detailed scans of the pack members. Adaptive learning across generations, Williams explained, adjusting what appeared to be an acoustic monitoring device. These wolves have developed hunting strategies specifically designed to deal with non-terrestrial threats. Their great-grandparents were the first to encounter off-world visitors, and they've been refining their techniques ever since. The casual way she mentioned non-terrestrial threats caught Zekthara's attention immediately. Other off-world visitors have studied these wolves? Williams' expression shifted slightly, revealing something that might have been amusement. studied them, attempted to hunt them, tried to capture them for export to private collectors. Earth's wildlife has become quite popular in certain galactic circles, particularly among beings who view our ecosystem as primitive and easily exploitable. Zekthara's sensors completed their initial analysis of the wolf pack, and the results were deeply troubling. These creatures possessed physical capabilities that placed them well above the baseline for standard predators. Their muscle density approached that of species evolved on high-gravity worlds, their sensory organs showed adaptations for detecting electromagnetic signatures across multiple spectrums, and their neural activity patterns suggested cognitive capabilities bordering on true sapience. More concerning were the subtle technological enhancements his deep scans revealed. Microscopic implants were distributed throughout their nervous systems, devices so sophisticated that they appeared to be grown rather than manufactured. The technology was unlike anything in galactic databases, suggesting capabilities that far exceeded known human engineering. Dr. Williams, he said slowly, these wolves have been technologically enhanced. Enhanced is such a crude term, she replied, her fingers dancing across the control interface of her monitoring equipment. We prefer to think of it as collaborative evolution. The implants don't change their fundamental nature, they simply allow them to reach their full potential. The implications hit Zekthara like a series of physical blows. If humans had the technology to enhance Earth's native predators to such a degree, then everything the galaxy believed about their capabilities was fundamentally wrong. The missing hunters hadn't been killed by primitive animals, they had been eliminated by creatures that represented the fusion of Earth's evolutionary heritage with advanced biotechnology. How long have humans possessed this enhancement technology? He asked. William's smile widened, revealing those slightly pointed canine teeth that he was beginning to suspect weren't as natural as they appeared. Who said the technology was human? Before Zekthara could process the implications of that statement, the wolves moved. Not the random movement of wild animals, but a coordinated tactical deployment that spoke of military precision. Within seconds, the entire pack had repositioned themselves to surround the clearing, cutting off all potential escape routes while maintaining optimal firing positions. I wouldn't recommend reaching for your weapons, Williams said quietly, though her tone remained conversational. They can detect aggressive intent at the neurochemical level. The moment you decide to fight, they'll know about it before you do. Zekthara forced himself to remain perfectly still, though every instinct screamed at him to activate his combat systems and begin defensive maneuvers. The wolf's positioning was textbook perfect, exactly the kind of encirclement tactics he had used against countless prey species across dozens of death worlds. Being on the receiving end of such coordination was a new and deeply unpleasant experience. What do you want? He asked, his voice carefully controlled. To understand why the Deathworld Hunters Guild has been taking contracts in human space, Williams replied. More specifically, we want to know who's been hiring you to eliminate our enhanced wildlife populations. The question caught him completely off guard. Eliminate your wildlife? Guildmaster Varthok was hired to protect agricultural settlements from predator attacks. Hunter Prime Zyxandra was contracted to clear mining operations of dangerous fauna. These were standard pest control assignments. William's expression darkened. Is that what they told you? That our enhanced populations were pests to be eliminated? She manipulated her monitoring device, causing a holographic display to appear in the air between them. The images showed various alien species that Zekthara recognized as major players in galactic commerce and politics. Corporate logos and government insignia accompanied each portrait, painting a picture of widespread involvement in whatever conspiracy was unfolding. The Krex Dominion has been attempting to establish mining rights on 17 different human worlds, Williams explained. The Centaurian Trade Federation wants to clear our forest worlds for agricultural development. The Veltar Colonial Authority believes our ocean worlds would make excellent resort destinations once the native ecosystems are simplified. Zekthara's mandibles clicked involuntarily as he recognized several familiar names and organizations. These were the same entities that had been offering increasingly lucrative contracts to elite hunters over the past 2 years, assignments that had seemed almost too easy for their stated difficulty ratings. You believe the missing hunters were eliminated to prevent them from discovering something, he said, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. Not to prevent discovery, Williams corrected. To send a message. Every hunter who disappeared was broadcasting their mission parameters on standard guild frequencies. Their employers knew exactly where they were and what they were doing. The eliminations were meant to be noticed. The wolf pack had maintained their positions throughout the conversation, but Zekthara noticed subtle changes in their deployment. They were no longer simply surrounding the clearing, they were actively herding something toward their location. His sensors detected movement in the forest beyond, multiple large signatures approaching with coordinated precision. "What kind of message?" he asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew the answer. "That Earth's ecosystems are not available for exploitation," Williams said simply. "That any attempt to simplify our biosphere for commercial development will be met with terminal resistance. That humans and their enhanced wildlife are not the primitive targets that galactic civilization believes us to be." The approaching signatures resolved into distinct contacts as they emerged from the forest. Zekthara found himself staring at creatures that defied every assumption he had made about Earth's wildlife. Bears the size of small vehicles moved with the fluid grace of apex predators, their eyes reflecting an intelligence that matched anything he had encountered among sentient species. Mountain cats with coat patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living camouflage padded through the underbrush with absolute silence. And, above them all, shapes that might have been birds of prey but were far too large and far too purposeful in their movements. "Enhanced wildlife," Williams said, following his gaze. "The wolves were just the beginning. We've been working with Earth's ecosystem for almost a century now, helping our native species reach their evolutionary potential. The results have been quite remarkable." Zekthara's combat systems were screaming warnings at him, painting threat assessments across his visual display that bordered on the impossible. Every creature surrounding them registered as a Class A predator, beings capable of taking down military-grade targets with minimal effort. The idea that humans had been secretly developing such capabilities while maintaining their facade of peaceful expansion was both terrifying and brilliant. "The missing hunters," he said slowly. "They discovered this." "They discovered part of it," Williams confirmed. "Unfortunately, their employers had made it clear that any evidence of enhanced Earth wildlife would be used to justify major military interventions. The Galactic Federation's xenobiological threat assessment protocols are quite specific about how to handle dangerous evolutionary anomalies. The threat was unmistakable. If the galaxy learned about Earth's enhanced ecosystems, the response would be overwhelming military force designed to sterilize entire biospheres. The missing hunters hadn't been killed to hide human capabilities, they had been eliminated to prevent a genocidal war that would have destroyed everything Earth's biologists had spent decades creating." "So you killed them," Zekthara stated. Williams' expression shifted, revealing something predatory that had been lurking beneath her academic facade. "We defended our world against beings who came here to commit ecological genocide. The fact that they were hired to do so doesn't change the fundamental nature of their mission." The enhanced bears had moved closer, their massive forms somehow managing to approach without making a sound. Zekthara's sensors indicated they were close enough to strike before he could activate his defensive systems, a tactical situation he had never encountered in 4 decades of professional hunting. "What about me?" he asked. "Am I to suffer the same fate?" "That depends," Williams replied. "Are you here to eliminate Earth's wildlife, or are you here to learn the truth about what happened to your fellow hunters?" The question hung in the air between them, surrounded by creatures that could end his existence in seconds if he chose poorly. Zekthara realized that everything he thought he knew about predator hierarchies and galactic power structures had been fundamentally wrong. Humans weren't the weak, primitive species they pretended to be. They were apex predators who had weaponized an entire planet's ecosystem while maintaining perfect camouflage as harmless civilians. "I came here seeking answers," he said finally. "What I have found challenges everything I believed about the galaxy's power structure." Williams nodded, and somehow the enhanced wildlife surrounding them relaxed slightly. Not enough to eliminate the threat they represented, but sufficient to suggest that immediate violence was no longer inevitable. "The galaxy is changing, Commander Zekthara," she said quietly. "The old assumptions about which species are predators and which are prey are becoming obsolete. Humans have learned to adapt those assumptions to our advantage, but we're not the only ones. Evolution never stops, and neither does the arms race between hunter and hunted." She gestured toward the enhanced creatures surrounding them. "These beings represent what's possible when intelligence and evolution work together instead of in opposition. They're not pets or tools, they're partners in a collaborative ecosystem that has capabilities the galaxy has never seen before." Zekthara studied the faces around him, searching for any sign of deception or misdirection. What he saw instead was something that challenged his understanding of intelligence itself. The enhanced wildlife wasn't just following human commands, They were actively participating in the conversation. Their positioning, their timing, their responses to verbal and non-verbal cues all suggested a level of cognitive cooperation that approached true partnership. The other hunters, he said slowly. How did they die? William's expression grew somber. Quickly and, with respect for their skills. We took no pleasure in their elimination, but their mission parameters made peaceful resolution impossible. They came here to destroy beings we consider family. The emotional weight behind her words was unmistakable. These weren't scientific experiments or military assets she was describing, they were genuinely personal relationships built over generations of mutual cooperation. The missing hunters hadn't just threatened Earth's ecosystem, they had threatened what amounted to an extended family of enhanced intelligences. And, now? Zekthara asked. Now you have a choice, Williams replied. You can return to Federation space with a report that will trigger the largest military intervention in galactic history. Or you can help us find a different solution to the problem of unauthorized contracts in human space. The weight of the decision settled over Zekthara like a physical presence. Either choice would fundamentally change the trajectory of his life and, possibly, the fate of multiple species. Around him, Earth's enhanced ecosystem waited with predatory patience for his response, ready to become either ally or executioner based on his decision. The silence stretched across the clearing as Zekthara weighed his options, surrounded by Earth's enhanced ecosystem waiting for his decision. The predators maintaining their positions weren't simply following tactical protocols, he realized. They were genuinely curious about his choice, their intelligence sophisticated enough to understand the broader implications of what was about to unfold. Before I decide, he said finally, I need to understand the full scope of what you're offering. You speak of finding a different solution, but the fundamental problem remains. The galaxy believes humans are weak, and that perception drives the contracts that bring hunters to your worlds. Dr. Williams nodded, her expression thoughtful. You're right, of course. The deception we've maintained has created its own problems. But, revealing our true capabilities would likely trigger the very response we've been trying to avoid. The Federation's first instinct when faced with unexpected threats is overwhelming military action. She gestured toward the enhanced wolves, who had subtly repositioned themselves to form what appeared to be a more relaxed perimeter. What we need is a way to demonstrate our defensive capabilities without appearing aggressive. A revelation that establishes our ability to protect ourselves while maintaining our peaceful reputation. Zekthara's tactical mind began processing the challenge. It was a delicate balance, requiring precise calibration of revelation and misdirection. Too little information and the contracts would continue, eventually forcing more direct confrontations. Too much and Earth would face the combined military might of species who viewed enhanced ecosystems as existential threats to galactic order. The missing hunters, he said slowly. Their disappearances have already created questions. If I return with evidence that they encountered something beyond their capabilities, it might serve your purposes without revealing the full extent of your enhancements. William's eyes sharpened with interest. What kind of evidence? Combat recordings that show skilled hunters being outmaneuvered by creatures displaying unusual intelligence and coordination. Nothing that explicitly demonstrates technological enhancement, but enough to establish that Earth's wildlife poses legitimate threats to off-world predators. One of the enhanced bears moved closer, its massive head tilting as if following the conversation. When it made a series of low vocalizations, Williams nodded as if responding to clearly articulated points. Interesting suggestion, she said. Marcus here points out that such recordings would need to be very carefully crafted. They would have to show our capabilities without revealing our methods. The casual way she referred to the bear by name and acknowledged its contribution to their strategic discussion drove home just how fundamental the changes to Earth's ecosystem really were. These weren't enhanced animals in any traditional sense, they were genuine partners in human civilization with their own perspectives and opinions. Marcus? Zekthara asked. Third-generation enhanced Ursus americanus, Williams explained. His grandmother was part of our first successful neural integration experiments. He's been working with our tactical planning division for almost 6 years now. The implications were staggering. Earth hadn't just enhanced individual animals, they had created entirely new forms of intelligence that spanned multiple generations. The missing hunters hadn't been killed by sophisticated animals, they had been eliminated by an integrated civilization that included both human and non-human citizens. How many enhanced species are there? Zekthara asked. On Earth? Approximately 400 distinct lineages across mammals, birds, reptiles, and marine species. In human colonial space? About half that number, with new integration projects beginning on every world we settle. The numbers painted a picture of systematic development that had been ongoing for far longer than anyone in the galaxy suspected. Humans hadn't recently begun enhancing their ecosystems, they had been building integrated biospheres for decades while maintaining perfect operational security. This level of coordination requires central planning, Zekthara observed. Some form of government oversight that goes far beyond what the Federation acknowledges about human political structures. William's smile returned, carrying undertones that suggested he was finally beginning to understand the true scope of what he had stumbled into. The human governments that interact with galactic civilization are exactly what they appear to be, democratic institutions focused on trade, diplomacy, and peaceful expansion. But Earth's enhanced ecosystem operates according to different principles. She gestured toward the creatures surrounding them, all of which seemed to be following the conversation with intense interest. When intelligence evolves beyond individual species boundaries, traditional governmental structures become obsolete. What we have instead is a collaborative consensus system that includes every enhanced intelligence on the planet. The concept was unlike anything in Zekthara's experience. Most civilizations struggle to achieve meaningful cooperation between different groups within the same species. The idea of genuine partnership across completely different evolutionary lineages suggested social and technological capabilities that dwarfed anything else in known galactic history. The missing hunters, he said, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. They didn't just encounter enhanced wildlife. They encountered a unified planetary intelligence. They encountered the collective response of a world that had decided to defend itself, Williams confirmed. Every enhanced intelligence on Earth contributed to the strategic planning that eliminated the threat they represented. It wasn't revenge or territorial aggression, it was collective self-defense. Zekthara's mind raced as he considered the ramifications. If Earth could coordinate planetary-level defensive responses through an integrated ecosystem, then their capabilities went far beyond what any single species could achieve. The missing hunters hadn't been outmatched by superior predators, they had been outmaneuvered by an entire world working in perfect coordination. Why are you telling me this? He asked. This information could destroy the carefully maintained deception you've built around human capabilities. Because, Williams said quietly, the deception is becoming unsustainable. Our colonial expansion is accelerating, and every new world we settle becomes another potential target for exploitation contracts. We can't eliminate every hunter who accepts those contracts without eventually triggering the investigation we've been trying to avoid. The enhanced mountain cats had positioned themselves to provide overwatch from elevated positions around the clearing, their movements so fluid and purposeful that they seemed to blur the line between natural grace and military precision. When one of them made a series of complex vocalizations, Williams paused to listen before nodding agreement. Sarah raises an excellent point, she said. Our current approach of eliminating individual threats is tactically sound but strategically unsustainable. Each disappeared hunter generates more questions and attracts more attention to our activities. Zekthara found himself in the surreal position of participating in a strategic planning session that included multiple non-human intelligences as equal participants. The casual way Williams deferred to the enhanced mountain cat's tactical assessment demonstrated a level of interspecies cooperation that redefined his understanding of what civilization could look like. What alternative are you proposing? He asked. A controlled revelation, Williams replied. Information carefully presented to establish our defensive capabilities while maintaining our peaceful reputation. The key is choosing the right messenger and the right audience. The pieces of their plan began to take shape in Zekthara's mind. They wanted him to return to galactic civilization as a witness to Earth's capabilities, carrying evidence that would discourage future hunting contracts without triggering military intervention. It was a delicate mission that required precise calibration of truth and misdirection. You want me to serve as your messenger, he said. We want you to serve as Earth's advocate, Williams corrected. Someone whose reputation and expertise can't be questioned when you report that human worlds are too dangerous for standard hunting operations. The enhanced wolves had relaxed their positions significantly, though Zekthara noticed they maintained perfect situational awareness of everything happening in the clearing. Their behavior suggested confidence that the conversation was proceeding in a favorable direction. What evidence would I carry? He asked. Williams produced a small data storage device from her equipment pack, its surface marked with symbols that appeared to shift and change as he watched them. Complete tactical recordings from 3 different hunter elimination operations. Enough detail to establish the capabilities of our enhanced ecosystems without revealing the technological basis for those capabilities. Zekthara accepted the device, noting that its design was unlike anything in Federation databases. The shifting symbols weren't decoration, they were some form of adaptive camouflage that would make the device virtually undetectable to standard scanning procedures. These recordings, he said. They show the actual deaths of Guildmaster Varthok and the others? They show tactical engagements where skilled hunters encountered coordinated ecosystem responses beyond their experience or preparation, Williams replied carefully. The specific details of what happened to them afterward have been edited for brevity. The euphemism was clear enough. The recordings would establish that the missing hunters had been outmatched and defeated, but wouldn't include the disturbing details of what Earth's enhanced predators did with their remains. And my role would be to present this evidence as proof that human worlds are too dangerous for hunting operations? Your role would be to tell the truth, Williams said. That Earth's ecosystems have evolved capabilities that make them unsuitable targets for standard exploitation. That hunting operations on human worlds carry unacceptable risks even for elite guild members. That the disappeared hunters encountered something beyond their training and equipment. Zekthara considered the implications of accepting such a mission. It would fundamentally change his relationship with the Deathworld Hunters Guild and, potentially end his career as an apex predator. But, it would also establish him as the being who had discovered one of the most significant developments in galactic history. What guarantees do I have? He asked. How do I know that your enhanced ecosystem won't decide I'm too dangerous to leave? Marcus, the enhanced bear, made another series of vocalizations that Williams translated with obvious amusement. He says that you're obviously too intelligent to waste on something as crude as elimination. Also, he's curious about your homeworld's ecosystem and wonders if you'd be interested in cultural exchange programs. The casual offer of interspecies cultural exchange from a technologically enhanced bear struck Zekthara is perhaps the most surreal moment in a day filled with paradigm-shifting revelations. The fact that it seemed like a genuine invitation rather than sophisticated psychological manipulation made it even more remarkable. I accept your proposal, he said finally. But, I have conditions. Name them, Williams replied. First, I want complete recordings of my time on Earth, including this conversation. If I'm going to stake my reputation on this evidence, I need to be able to verify every detail. Agreed. Second, I want to observe one of your enhanced ecosystems in full defensive mode. Not a demonstration, but actual tactical capabilities under realistic conditions. Williams exchanged what appeared to be meaningful looks with several of the enhanced creatures surrounding them. After a moment of consideration, she nodded. That can be arranged. We have a training exercise scheduled for tomorrow that should meet your requirements. Third, I want assurances that this revelation won't be used as pretext for aggressive action against other species. Earth's capabilities are impressive, but they don't justify expansion through intimidation. Commander Zekthara, Williams said seriously, Earth's enhanced ecosystem exists for one purpose, the defense of integrated biospheres against external threats. We have no interest in conquest or expansion through force. What we've built here represents cooperation, not domination. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable, but more convincing was the body language of the enhanced creatures around them. Their relaxed postures and genuine curiosity about him suggested beings confident in their defensive capabilities but genuinely uninterested in aggressive action. Then, we have an agreement, Zekthara said, securing the data storage device in his equipment harness. As the enhanced ecosystem began to disperse, returning to whatever activities had occupied them before his arrival, Zekthara found himself contemplating the magnitude of what he had just committed to. In accepting Williams' proposal, he had agreed to become the herald of a new age in galactic civilization, the messenger who would announce that the balance of power between predator and prey had fundamentally shifted. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest deception hadn't been hiding their weakness, but concealing their strength. And Zekthara, the premier Deathworld hunter who had boasted about conquering the galaxy's most dangerous predators, was about to deliver the message that would change everything. As they walked back toward the bio-integrated transport, Williams made one final observation that would haunt his thoughts for weeks to come. You know, Commander, you asked earlier whether any of the galaxy's predators had survived an encounter with a human. The answer is yes, but probably not in the way you expected. She gestured toward the forest around them, where enhanced intelligences moved through the shadows with purpose and grace beyond anything natural selection had ever produced. They didn't just survive, they evolved. And now, they're coming home.